everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So it has been a long time since I've done a dedicated snake video or any sort of dedicated snake feeding video. And that is exactly what we are going to be doing today. We are going to be doing a video where I go and feed some of my snakes, show you guys how it's done, tell you guys how these guys eat and everything about them, just a little bit of information on snakes and their diets. So with that said, let's talk about snakes and their diets a little bit. So I'm sure as many of you know, some of you may not, snakes are carnivores, which means they eat meat. However, snakes aren't going to be eating like chicken breasts or steak or anything like that, nothing similar to the meat that humans consume. Instead, they are going to be eating raw, whole prey food. Snakes absolutely cannot survive on any sort of vegan or vegetarian diet. They need to consume meat, and snakes also can't just survive on things like chicken breasts, like I mentioned. Even if you do happen to have a snake who will eat things like that, that is not going to make them healthy. Snakes need the entire animal because they need all of the organs that the animal has. They need the bones and everything. Snakes use every single part of the animal when they eat it. With that said, I do want to put a little disclaimer out there. In this video, I will be showing dead animals that I will be feeding to my snakes. These animals include mice and baby chicks. If you're not at all comfortable with seeing that, this is totally fine. Feel free to click off. It is not for everyone, but for those of you who do watch, I definitely encourage you to continue watching. None of the animals I'll be feeding my snakes in this video are alive. These are frozen, thawed prey items that I'm going to be giving to my snakes, so you will not be seeing any live feedings today. However, you will be seeing uncensored frozen thawed feedings. I do also want to mention that I'm not going to be feeding every snake that I own today. Not all of my snakes are on the same feeding schedule, and I'm only doing this video based off the ones who need to be fed today. So if you don't see one or a few of my snakes, no need to worry or anything. They just all don't eat tonight, which means I'm not filming all of them tonight. Now that all of this is said and out of the way, let's just go ahead and start feeding my snakes. So before I go and feed my snakes, there's actually one thing I want to do first, and that is mist down some of the enclosures. So I mist some of my enclosures on purpose before I feed some of my snakes. So out in the wild, rain often encourages some animals like snakes to hunt. The reason for this, if there is a big rainfall, it brings out a lot of animals because, you know, the animals need the water. So that means the food that these snakes are going to be preying on are more likely to be out and about after a little bit of a rainfall. So sometimes by misting these snakes' enclosures before feeding them, you can kind of get them in more of a feeding mood. Some of my snakes aren't always the easiest to feed. Some of them don't have a super high feeding response, so I find misting their enclosure beforehand to sometimes just kind of get their attention a little bit helps to make feeding easier. Now you don't need to do this. Some snakes have no problem. I don't do it to all of my snakes, but some of them I do go ahead and mist it down before I feed them. I just wanted to pop in and give one little warning again here. Right after this clip, there is going to be some frozen thawed animals on screen. So once again, if you're not comfortable seeing that, you should click off now before we start feeding the snake. Hopefully now, those of you who don't want to watch the snake feedings have already clicked away. So with that said, let's go ahead and start feeding some snakes now. So in this container right here, I have all of the snake food that I've thawed out. So here I have a mix of mice and chicks. Now I do want to say chicks are not a food item that I feed often. My snakes mainly feed on mice and rats. However, I am a big believer in giving variety to your animals. I think it is healthy for them and I think it's enriching for them. So for this particular feeding, I am going to be feeding some chicks today. So let's go ahead and warm these up. So what I'm doing to warm these up is I'm just putting them in a bit of warm water right now. You don't want the water to be too hot or anything. You just want it to be warm enough to warm the food items up so then they can be fed to the animals. Some people prefer to put the rodents and stuff in a Ziploc baggie or something first and then soak that bag in warm water so that the rodents themselves don't get wet. I personally have never had any issue just soaking them directly in water. My snakes have no issue being picky or anything. They will eat them whether they are wet or dry. So I find this to be the easiest thing for me to do, so this is what I do. One of the reasons why it's so important that you warm up your snake's prey before feeding it to them is, well, one, you know, it's not good for them to be eating frozen or cold food. Think about it, in the wild they are typically only going to be eating live animals, which are normally pretty warm. But then another reason why you want to warm them up is because a lot of snakes can actually detect heat. Let's take a ball python for example. If you look at a ball python's face close up, you'll notice a bunch of little holes right above their mouth. These are heat pits. Now these heat pits basically allow them to see heat. Ball pythons have really poor eyesight when it comes to their actual eyes. So their eyes aren't very useful when it comes to hunting. They rely mainly on a sense of smell and also the heat. So if you're ever trying to feed your snake something cold, it's possible that they don't recognize it as food at all. So we now have all of our food items warmed up and ready to feed. So now the only other thing we're going to need is these feeding tongs. People often ask if you need to supplement snake's food with any sort of vitamins or calciums, the same as you would with a lot of different lizards and stuff. The answer to that is no, as long as your snakes are being fed whole prey items such as whole rats, whole mice, whole chicks, whatever it may be, they will be getting all of the nutrition that they need, and they do not need any additional supplements. Alright, so let's go ahead and feed Angel. So you can probably see Angel's head poking out there. So Angel is going to be fed a chick today. As I mentioned before, my ball pythons don't normally eat chicks. They would normally eat rats. However, like I mentioned, I think that variety is really good for their nutritional value and also good enrichment for them. So chicks are what's on the menu today. So I'm just going to hang the chick right here pretty close to her. You don't want it to be right at their face or anything. That'll most likely just scare them away, but just close enough that they can smell it and see what's going on without being too scared of it or anything. So right in here we have Willow, my children's python. Now Willow is normally has a very big, there we go. As I was saying, Willow normally has a very high feeding response. So it is a little bit hard to see what's going on here because Willow is kind of hiding in some wood and stuff. She is currently coiling around the mouse and then she's going to swallow it. So this is how most snakes that aren't venomous eat their prey. If a snake isn't venomous, it is most likely going to catch its prey, constrict around it, and then swallow it. Okay, so right in this enclosure here, we have Casper, who is my banana ball python. So Casper today is going to be getting a chick to eat. See if I can get him to kind of swoop around into his enclosure to eat this. He really wants to just hang out, doesn't he? And there we go, and probably barely even saw that because of the angle. So here you can see Willow really working her mouth over this mouse. So it is a very common misconception that snakes unhinge their jaws in order to eat. This isn't exactly true, however snakes do still have a fun little jaw trick that they use. So snakes do not unhinge their jaws. None of that happens at all when they eat. However, snakes do not have a chin. Both sides of their lower jaw are not attached to anything in the front. Like I said, there's no chin there, so these are just two separate bones. This allows their lower jaw to expand quite large in order for them to eat larger prey. It is not them dislocating their jaw, but instead it is just their lack of a chin that allows their mouth to get so big. So what you see Angel doing right now with this chick probably looks very, very odd. However, what she's doing is basically trying to reposition this chick into a way that's going to allow her to swallow it best, which normally is head first. So she's trying to work her jaws up to the head of this chick without dropping it or anything, so then she can properly swallow it. So now this is what they're going to do in order to swallow their prey. Looking at it, it looks like it is way too big to fit. However, snakes are very specially designed in order to be able to eat large prey items. Snakes have tons and tons and tons of muscles all throughout their body that are going to help move this rodent down into her stomach. So So since Casper first struck at that chick from outside the enclosure, I went ahead and just gently moved him back inside where he can now go ahead and eat this chick in peace. So as I've mentioned before, chicks are not something I feed my snakes very frequently. My snakes mainly are on a diet of mice and rats. However, as I mentioned before, I do think that variety in diets for any animal is really good for them. You know, it just helps give them more nutrients, and it is also good enrichment for them. So hopefully Casper is going to enjoy having this. So now that Angel successfully repositioned the chick to have the head in the main part of her mouth, she's probably gonna go ahead and start trying to work it down her body now. So now eating these chicks is probably a little bit weird compared to her normal rat, because these chicks have a lot smaller of a neck. So typically a rat is going to be thick bodied right from head right to the end of its butt, I guess, whereas the chicks have a very thin neck, so it's not as easy for them to get a good grip to properly push it down their throat, but she will get there. So Tangerine just went ahead and took her mouth. In my experience owning snakes, corn snakes have by far been the easiest to feed. I have really never had issues with my corn snakes refusing food or anything like that. So feeding my corn snakes is always really fun because you can normally always expect something a little bit exciting with them. So Titan went ahead and grabbed his chick with no hesitation and is currently coiling around it. So we're gonna leave him. Titan normally coils around his food for quite a long time before eating it, so probably not a whole lot of exciting things are going to happen here. However, if we check back in on Angel, she's still actively working on her chick, as is Casper. So as you can see, Angel has swallowed a decent portion of the chick now. It's just the last little half that's remaining. So Casper here thought that it would be a good idea to take his food swimming before eating it. So enjoy Casper with his food in a water bowl. And right here we have Ghost, who is one of my other corn snakes. She is going to be eating an adult mouse. As I mentioned with Tangerine, corn snakes, like I said, are always super fun to feed for me. Can basically always rely on them to take down a meal in a very short amount of time. So all of the snakes that I was feeding and filming have now been filmed and fed. So with that said, we can just go ahead and end the video here. I want to thank you guys for watching. I really hope that you guys enjoyed seeing my snakes eating, and hopefully you guys learned a little bit about them or just snakes eating in general. If you did enjoy this video, it would mean a ton to me if you would give it a big thumbs up, and also subscribe to my channel. It would also mean a lot to me if you checked out all of my social media. It will all be down in the description below if you want to go ahead and take a look. It would mean a lot to me if you did that. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. With all of that said, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and like I said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all next time.